Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have major news to get to. This is great for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is pulling nearly $2 million worth of ads in North Carolina and also reportedly dumping it into Virginia. Amazing news. It tells me the Harris campaign is not confident at all in North Carolina. They think they're probably going to lose it, and they are trying to shore up Virginia, which is a state that's kind of come into the spotlight over the past week as a potential swing state, depending on what happens with maybe another poll that comes out of Virginia, because there's a rumor that there's a poll that has Trump +1. If we get a poll that has Trump +1 after the last 3 or 4 polls we've seen in Virginia, we're talking about the overall aggregate being within the margin of error in Virginia. So that becomes a swing state. So it doesn't surprise me that they're dumping money into Virginia. I think the Harris campaign at this point is pretty much done with the Sun Belt. They're not going to win Arizona. They're not going to win Georgia. They're pulling money out of North Carolina. Nevada's 50-50 right now, but it's trending away based on the early vote. They are going for broke with the Rust Belt, the Harris campaign. I think that's what they're doing. And they're also trying to shore up a Virginia and maybe a New Hampshire. Those are two states that have gotten very close here within the past few days, but that is good news. $2 million in ads. I mean, whether or not you think $2 million is a lot, to be pulling money from North Carolina says that they're not confident at all in North Carolina, and they potentially view spending money in North Carolina as kind of a lost cause and a waste. And, you know, those resources can be allocated better in a state like Virginia to make sure they shore that state up and win it, and then focus on the Rust Belt if you are the Harris campaign. I mean, there's been very, very close polls in North Carolina. I could understand if they were pulling money out of Georgia based on the polls and what we've seen there recently, because it seems like right now Georgia has a higher chance than North Carolina. I think they're both going to Trump, and they're both probably above 65 to 70% chance going to go to Trump. But Georgia seems really, really favorable for Trump. But either way, I think you're going to get a lot of these reports where they think the Sun Belt is gone, and they're going to say, we don't need the Sun Belt. We can get to 270 with just the Rust Belt. But you're putting all your eggs into the Rust Belt basket. You don't want to be in that position. You've got one path if you are Harris, if they do decide to go with that. Maybe they'll also try and pick off a Nevada. I still think Nevada potentially, I think it's probably going to go to Trump, but there's, you know, it's very close in terms of the polling there. We've also got JD Vance. He's going to be doing an interview with Joe Rogan tomorrow for his podcast. That will likely be uploaded tomorrow or the next day. So it'll go up either Wednesday or Thursday. Amazing news. JD Vance is great in terms of his ability to articulate. And listen, this is, I mean, to me, it's just such a blowout. I would love to see Walls do an interview with Joe Rogan. I was talking about in my last video about how Rogan was saying that Harris had all these demands, like she can only do 1 hour and you have to go to her. Rogan would have to travel to her. I'm sure JD Vance will be in Austin, Texas, in Rogan's studio to do this podcast. And again, JD Vance, a very, very sharp dude. I'm sure he's going to come off great. We saw how great he was in the debate. He raised his approval rating by like 10 points just in that one debate alone. It's basically even at this point. So very, very good news. Going to be good to listen to JD Vance, and very, very smart by the Trump campaign to schedule that as well. We also do have, you can see this, canceled TV buys in North Carolina. And apparently they're moving that money to Virginia. We've got a final Wisconsin poll. This is Insider Advantage. They were really good in 2020. They've got Trump up by 1. They've got Hovde up by 1 as well. I mean, Hovde might, I don't know if he's going to outperform Trump. It'd be surprising. I mean, just based on the polls with the senators performing worse than Trump in basically everything. But the exact same in terms of the president and the Senate. So Trump wins by 1.5 to 2. Hovde might win by 1 over Baldwin. And maybe Wisconsin goes red in terms of the Senate. Pennsylvania also possibly could go red. Michigan probably. I mean, all three of them in terms of the Senate are basically toss-ups right now when looking at that. We also do have a final Nevada poll from CNN. This to me is kind of weird data. So it's got Trump +1, but then it has Rosen up by 9 over Sam Brown. It's just, there's no way Brown loses by 9 points. So I really don't know what to make of that. But a lot of these Senate polls have been, they've been way underestimating the Republicans relative to Trump. Like, I don't think Brown is going to perform that much worse than Trump at all. But, you know, Trump up by 1 in Nevada. I know that CNN also released their final Arizona poll that had Harris up by 1. And their previous poll prior to that had Trump up by 5. And also they had Kerry Lake losing by a ton as well. I just think the Senate, like, to me, when you have a poll like this, I don't really buy into this. Rosen up by 9. It's just not very realistic when looking at something like this. We've also got this. This was an interesting little clip here when it comes to immigration.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
That number can't be true. But notice the gaslighting on that, on this whole thing when it comes to immigration. Well, liberals messed up and let all these people into the country with their terrible policies and what Biden did in 2021 with all the executive orders. But now we can't deport them because it's going to cost too much money. Well, why were they let into the country in the first place? That's the question you have to ask. But I don't know. That figure can't be right.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
That's a wrong figure. And also it's like they blame conservatives. Like, you're going to cost so much money deporting these people. Who let them into the country in the first place? It's almost like they want to, it's so funny. Like, and this is another thing that I wanted to talk about. Like, if Harris wins the election, a lot of independent people undoubtedly will go more to the right if Harris wins this election. And I know people are going to, people are going to freak out. There's going to be a lot more illegals let in. They're going to be given amnesty. It's a big problem. I agree. It's going to be this weird thing where it's like, will the independent people shift right enough to compensate for the amount of illegals that come into the country and then turn legal and then start voting Democrat because they vote Democrat once they become legal? The immigrants do it like a 75% rate. But independent people will become more conservative. I mean, just look at the immigration topic alone. What liberals are currently arguing is not their viewpoint. They don't believe any of this. They don't believe in a closed border. They don't believe in strong support around the border and not allowing people to come into the country. The reason they're doing this is because they're trying to stay in power. That's it. They don't believe any of this, right? And so the reason we've seen immigration, the topic, shift so far to the right is because of what Biden did in 2021, where he opened the border, got rid of all of Trump's executive orders. This was the game plan. They said in 2020 when they were running that Trump was a racist for closing the border. They said it. So obviously they're going to open it. That's exactly what they did with all the executive orders. And that's why we saw the mass illegal immigration into the country beginning in 2021. And then recently they've shored it up because they're trying to get reelected. Isn't it amazing how we get horrible, wide open borders in 2022 and 2021 when there's no general election? But now that there's a general election, oh, they're so strong on illegal immigration, guys. Don't worry about 2021 or 2022 when they let 11 million illegals in it, and it's at least 11 million. It's probably more than that. I mean, Trump says it's over 20, but it's just such bullshit. It's such bullshit. Like, and that's why I'm saying the country will get more right-wing if Harris wins because of the amount of illegals that are going to be poured in. But it's not even just the illegals. It's also giving all of them amnesty, and there's going to be no deportations. That's another thing. But it's just like the topic of immigration. In 2016, they're like, what about the Dreamers? How are you going to build a wall? You're so racist. You're racist against Mexicans. You're racist against minorities. They're not saying that now because the country has shifted to the right on the topic of immigration. We now, independent people want a strong border, so they can't say that shit anymore. So now they're like, oh, we believe in border security. I was a badass prosecutor. I prosecuted transnational criminals or whatever she says. And so see how these topics, they can shift based off of bad policy. Biden had a horrible liberal policy in 2021, and it's forced independents more so into the conservative camp on the topic of immigration. So they have to cede that topic now to conservatives. And that's why Trump wins the border by 15 to 20 points on average. And now Harris is doing the fake bullshit. I'm going to be strong in the border. You're going to be strong in the border. Your administration let at least 11 million illegals in, and you're going to give them amnesty. So how is that strong? What are you talking about? It doesn't even make any sense. So that's really what's going on with the border. But guys, overall, I think these numbers for Trump, they're still looking really good. It looks like Harris is giving up North Carolina. She's giving up Georgia. She's giving up Arizona. She's not going to win Nevada. She needs the Rust Belt, and that's really what it comes down to, is the Rust Belt, and it's not going to happen. And in my opinion, it's just a Hail Mary attempt. But either way, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.